So yeah, I'm all for just stopping as much as we need it as we need to. In terms of the game itself, I um, I reread the rules yesterday and today just to make sure I was current. And what I see is that there are rules for corruption, there are rules for time travel, there are rules for peering into the future, which I think we've decided to change a little bit to actually being hopping into the future and seeing it firsthand. Um, and there's rules for stunts. Everything else looks like it's pretty much, and there's different skills. Everything else looks like it's pretty much Fate Core.
Yeah,
Um,
for the most part, even the skill list is Fate Core.
cool.
There's only a couple of changes.
Cool. So I am inclined not to playtest that shit out too much because that's Fate Core, and skip right to, well, try to engage as quickly as possible with the stuff we've done. The other thing is that I'm also inclined not to create a world because we've already created a really cool one. So while I think that in play, like in an actual game, having people create their major events and all the shit that happened is great and it builds investment. I think for us, using the events that we've already have written not only allows us to start thinking of examples of play to put in there that are like will be tied into the book, but also means we don't have to go through the whole like world creation phase before we start playing. What do you cats think?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do, because I need to write this up, is just to make sure that we're clear on the order of beginning. I mean, do we start with character creation, then timeline creation, or do you timeline creation, then character creation? Because one might influence the other. Um, because that's the thing. That's the kind of stuff that I need, that I want to see and get everybody's feedback on, because I need to write that up to put into the doc.
Yeah.
Um, and
So so here's the thing. I think this is the worst part about Fate. It's not the worst part. It's a bad part about Fate. Is I think that in the book we should write it one way, and in practice we should encourage people to do it a different way. And here's why. In the book, it's really good to have one and then the other. So say, I would say make the timeline and then make characters that tie into it. But
that's
in
kind of what I
practice,
was thinking.
what most people want to do is like, I want to be a space cyborg. And you're like, cool, you're a space cyborg, awesome. You're from the future, I guess. I hope. Um, and everybody makes their character with a high concept and a trouble and their skills, and then when you fill out the next three aspects where you tie people into each other, that's when you start talking about. That's when you then go to do the timeline, the world, figure out all the important shit, and then have people make three aspects about that important shit you just built, so that they have their high like space cyborg concept, and then their other three and their trouble, but then their other three concepts are tied to the world. But in a book, that comes across horribly. I know it because we tried it with War of Ashes, and it was a nightmare. And we said, "Fuck that shit, we're not doing that anymore." So it's too confusing to say do half of character creation, then setting creation, and then back to character creation. Even though that's kind of how most groups end up doing it, I think.
But that's
Okay.
what this sort of thing is the hangouts, the videos, the how-to that you can drop on YouTube afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So I'm inclined. I always like to have characters that feel like they're a product of the world that they're playing in. So I'm inclined to say pick all the things that went terribly wrong, and then make characters that are tied into that. That said, I'd kind of like to start tonight without firm characters and play a little bit until we get to character creation. No, that's not going to make any sense, but I'd like to see like fast forward, like get right to the meat of the action, which might mean having playing like several different characters, some from the future, some from the past, and then settling in on who we're actually going to play, like who your three PCs are, once we've kind of done the prelude, and then we can look back and say, like, that was a terrible idea, Sean, or that was fine for this game, but we won't encourage it in the text, or that's great, let's build that into the text. But are you guys sort of up for me, I don't know, doing a little bit of world building through character creation process sort of thing, kind of majigger?
Sure. My one of the things I had, and we don't have to do it here, but one of the things that I want to do is try out the creating a timeline, because there are some things that have popped up the more I've thought about it that I can see being an issue. Like number of events versus number of players. If you're going around the table, do you run out of events before you run out of players? What if you have, fewer players than you have events, that kind of thing. But we can work that out later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm fine.
I kind of want to see if the events work, but I think it's a good point. We should test out making the events. We just have such good ones. It's like a shame not to just use this awesome stuff we have. It's your fault for making really sexy events, Steven.
Yeah, MRSA Plague is really sexy.
It's super hot. All right.
I know I'm around.
One thing I do just want to point out, the number of events, at least with the way things have been designed so far, is static, because the changing the future doesn't work if you have fewer events or more.
Yeah.
I guess it might work if you have more. You just don't change.
Yeah, I don't
every
think
event.
you can get away with fewer, though.
Right. You can't. You need to have at least 5.
Right. Well, and the thing is, I think that the reason why you would want more or fewer events is less about the number of players and more about the context of the game, whether it's a campaign game or a one-shot. Like, honestly, if it's a one-shot, I would just say pick one event. Like, don't even worry about the whole ripple effect, because you can describe that narratively. Right. Like, you don't need to have all the mechanics backing you, because you're going to play for a few hours and be done. So I would be more inclined to base it on that than players. And like, but yeah, I think it's a good question. If you have a big group, will there be enough for everybody to have input if you have 4 events? I think so, but
yeah, because each event should be a discussion, right?
Yeah.
Well, that exactly. So when creating, I expect that creating a timeline is going to take up a fair amount of time, because there's going to be, how does this link into that one? It's not just, okay, you threw together some aspects for timelines, okay, you're good to go. It's like, no, we need to, you're building a history. So yeah, we don't need to do that here, obviously, but like you said, there's going to be a lot of discussion.
Yep. Yeah, I expect it to be a full session 0, the way Dress and File's city creation is.
Yeah. That said, I really like the idea of starting with the building characters and add them to in the setting as described here, and maybe as we go, we end up with a number of NPCs we'll have a better sense of.
Yeah. It's interesting, because I think that's a good way to build a really rich setting, but there's 2 fears I have. One is that people tap out because they're like, I just want to play. I don't want to have to think of all this shit. Can't the GM do it? And the other one is that you kind of play before you play. Like, you describe all the cool shit, and then everyone's like, well, guess we did it.
That was cool.
That was cool. What do we do now? Because we did it all. And those are both kind of problems with heavy setting games. I think that by making it so that we're the ones, or it's not we're the ones, that the players are the ones that define the game, we reduce some of that. But I've seen games where like there's so much setting material that by the time you get to it, people are just like, I don't even know what to do now. Like the world's fixed.
So how do you handle that in Dresden Files? You've got the city creation. What about people who don't want to go through that? Is there something for either streamlining that or something already built?
Yeah,
Well,
that's what.
there's already the Baltimore setting, and then the expansion book. I forget what it is.
Paranet Papers.
The most recent one, Paranet Papers, has a few more settings, but the real way that Dresden Files does it is everything that you are doing in Dresden Files is building a plot hook. That's really what you're doing when you're creating a city. Is you're making a series of plot hooks that are given NPC faces that you can interact with.
Yeah.
Okay.
In our campaign, we also left a number of blanks. Like we didn't want to fill everything. We wanted to be sure to be able to add as ideas grabbed us.
Yeah. And I think that the book says, build everything out, but the book was written in 2007, and we've learned a lot since then. And that's one of the things that Sophie was saying. Sophie was just saying that like leaving a few things unknown makes more room for exploration. So that may be something we find too, that we want to. Like, I think again we should play with the setting you have right now. But if we start butting heads with it, we're like, I don't know what to do because it's too defined. Then I mean, the good thing that we have is that everything that's in the status quo is terrible, like, literally -2. So it's not like Dresden where you're like, this is this cool city of Baltimore, and I know this guy, and he's really cool, and he likes me, so I don't want to piss him off. I want to keep him liking me. You're like, no, this is fucking snake monster. This is horrible. We don't like that. So you have the advantage of everything you set up, like PK was saying is a plot hook, but everything you set up is also like obviously antagonistic for the most part. So there's plenty of stuff to fight and fuck up and
Dresden Files is going to be a lot more gray, a lot more unsure of what should and should not be changed or what is and is not bad. Here, the assumption going into a campaign is, no, shit is terrible. Get out there and fix it. Change it. So we need to emphasize, and I'm taking notes, we need to emphasize that our timeline creation is building plot hooks and giving people things to grab onto that they want to change.
Okay. No, yeah, I think you're right. Because that's the thing with the default, with the sample setting, it's not just the specific, like the aspects, but it's also the specific events you're trying to change. And I also put in there like 2 or 3 possibilities for doing that. So that players can maintain a certain level of ambiguity that the GM can fill in for what the actual scenario is going to be.
Yep. And I just want to say this so it's recorded. It might not be a bad idea to do what Sean was talking about with one-shots and having maybe a small chapter or a small section on running this as a one-shot as opposed to a campaign, about how you just pick one event and how you deal with that in a one-shot as opposed to a campaign. Because right now everything that I've designed is very campaign-focused. It's very much focused on the series of Terminator films, not Terminator the movie, and having a meaningful resolution at the end of it.
Yeah, I've looked at something similar down too.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I grab a book like that, I always love when there's a section to talk about all the edge cases, the one-off gamings, the what if you lose a player that had a lot of say or sway in designing the setting. What if you're playing online? All that sort of things we run into all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might also be a good place to put in variant information, because I have a feeling that we're going to run into some people who are going to read the backstory for how fucked everything is and go, actually, I want to play in a post-apocalyptic world with Cthulhu monsters.
Right.
And we might want to. So that's a good section, I think, to put things like that. What happens if you don't want to send characters to 2018? What if you want to do it as a cyberpunk kind of thing where they go back to 2025, or you push it forward, or whatever?
Right.
Or what if you just want to play Apocalypse World Fate in a post-Cthulhu apocalypse?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cthulhu tech exists, I'd point out.
Yes.
But that certainly doesn't mean we can't
Well, that's the thing is, I don't think we need to devote anything more than here's the question, and just like 2-3 bullet points of things to suggestions to do it as.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's good material to include. I also think that we should be cognizant of what we actually need during play, and try to put a section, whether it be like the quick reference sheet, or whether it be a 30-second synopsis of the rules, but consider when we're writing being play focused, and that like we have all the setting material that like maybe one person might read and a lot of people won't. So having a place where there's material that everybody who plays the game could reference and be like, here's how you learn to play the game in 5 minutes, rather than the entire book. Those are just sections I think we should be. Yeah, I think that all fits in the same aspect of accessibility, making it so that no matter what somebody wants to do with it, they have a piece of the book that's like, oh, you want to do this? Cool. Here's how you do it.
A one-sheet instruction set.
So I would like to set something in Mexico with Yig as the primary sort of threat, and Dagon being not so very far away. Does that sound amenable? And I say this totally biased because I just played a cartel game and it was awesome, and so I have cartel on the brain. So that's.
And Yig is the snake god.
He's the snake god.
Yeah. He's like the 300-foot long snake. Yeah. So I'm gonna jump in, and if anyone's like, "What the fuck are you doing, Sean?" feel free to back up. But this is me trying to develop the backdrop without making a shitload of preloading. So let's see how this goes. All right. It is 2035. When does the world end? When does shit?
It ends in 2030, but you go back in 2035. From 2035. So it's like 5 years of everything being
into
horrible.
hell.
Right.
And progressively horrible, and humanity has kind of gotten enough of its feet under it where they discover that they can go in the past, but if they stick around in the future and don't do anything, they're going to lose.
Right. Awesome. So it is 2035. One of you is a local from Durango, Mexico, who has been ostracized from your small encampment due to your corruption. Tell me about, describe the small enclave of people that are still fighting right now, that had just, that you called family yesterday and just kicked you out into the wild. Easy prompt, I know. You guys.
They're a
simple
guerrilla
shit.
band that have been bouncing from place to place, not staying anywhere for very long, because they may not actively be hunted, but they're certainly running into things where sticking around in one spot too long it just ends up being bad.
Awesome. And was there someone? Did you leave behind someone you loved in this band?
Huh. Let's go with sister.
Yes, awesome, your sister. And whose choice was it for you to leave? Did they actually kick you out, or did you decide that you were a threat to them and leave on your own?
I think kicked out.
Awesome. Oh, man, your own sister did it. Awesome. So, another one of you. Sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
Another one of you is the engineer, scientist that is running a that controls the bunker where Yogg's the technology, the computers, and the apparatus necessary exist to facilitate time travel in this area. Tell me what the bunker looks like and who's in, like how many people are in there to make it all work, and what the technology looks like.
Do you want this one, Sophie, or should I grab it?
Sure. Well, you're the master of time travel, aren't you?
Apparently, I'm the one who wrote all the rules for it.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Exactly. So, go for it.
Okay, so the setting where this is put is a modern version of a Mayan step pyramid.
Awesome.
I know Durango is too far north for the pyramids, but old architecture dies hard, and there might be some mathematical symbolism.
Did I say Durango? I meant Guadalajara. Is that far
sure.
enough?
But this is also not old. This is not old ruins. This is freshly constructed, new stuff. The staff is fairly small. It's only about 20 people, a little less, let's say 18. I am the lead researcher, or technician, whatever you want to call it. But we have to keep it staffed 24 hours a day.
Why is
just
that?
to make sure. Because it never shuts off. I think it's a huge pain in the ass to get it up and running, and maintenance or maintaining it is just easier than getting it going.
And what is the constant source of fuel that you need to replenish in order to facilitate it running? Whether that be electricity or whatever the power source is.
Blood sacrifices.
No, I like the idea that it's electricity.
Okay.
And like in the basement level, or actually, yeah, just because it sounds cool. It's also a nuclear pile. That's what's driving the energy. So
awesome.
A little on the outskirts, we have the vast the steam vents that
right.
For the cooling towers.
Awesome.
So you have the pyramid in the center, and then cooling towers on the outsides.
And how many people have you lost due to radiation leaks? Because those things can't be like constantly made, because the reactor cores themselves can't be adequately the cores can't be adequately disposed of.
Yeah, I'm going to say like over the last 7 years, like 25 people.
Nice.
It's a high rate.
It's a high rate of attrition, but it's necessary. All right,
it is.
Sophie, since you're the last player, you came from 3 days in the future, and have just arrived now here at this presence where a Guadalajaran refugee that has has meandered to this pyramid, and you've seen the end of the world as you know it. What happens 3 days from now?
The the core is it goes haywire. The reaction goes out of control, and it wasn't clear 3 days into the future whether it was accident or sabotage. But whatever happened, it was about to destroy our only way of maybe salvaging things. The gate will become unusable forever, and I have to prevent this from happening.
Awesome. And this might be you might be the right person to answer this, but any one of you tell me why you need to go back now to 2018. What threat is looming in the present? Possibly the threat that is causing the malfunction in 3 days. Or why is it that the threat that will end the world in 3 days needs to be addressed back in 2018?
Safety measures in the design of the reactor when it was built back in 2018 weren't
Nice.
sufficient.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Killer.
What we think is a radiation leak and is what's causing such a high rate of attrition is actually not nuclear radiation, but like temporal radiation.
Oh yeah.
Radiation. I love it. Cool. So, someone describe. Is it just the three of you going back, or are there more that are being sent? PK, you may have to fudge some wacky reason as to why the scientist operating this thing is going back as well. But let's.
Well, he understands the design specs.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Like I think my character is the one who knows the reactor and is the one who can see what has happened. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm the one who said, "Hey, this isn't radiation as we understand it. There's something different going on with this pile."
Yeah, I think I came back 3 days thinking I will just stop the accident or the sabotage, and then when you listen to my story, you realize that it couldn't be stopped now. You have to go way further to stop it. But maybe there's a lot of other people who will want to run in, because anybody who heard this will realize that their fate is sealed if they stay here. So maybe there's a crazy exodus of the scientists and technicians going through the gate when you open it.
Yeah, I imagine like some of them want to go back and some of them want to just get far away. Like some of them are like, I'm just getting the hell out of here because I have 3 days to escape the blast radius, and others will get out of now. I love it. So there's a let's say a group of 6 people, including yourselves, that all go back.
Sure.
I have one more idea that I think
Yeah.
would be neat. Since we've established it's some sort of like coronal radiation leak, another part of the reason we have to go back is it has been saturating and irradiating the area around it. So even if we just shut off the reactor, there's still just terrible time-based distortions going on around this whole temple area.
Awesome. Is that Stephen? Is that how your character got so horribly corrupted out of nowhere? Just
Yeah.
exposure to this
Yes,
temporal radiation?
the temporal radiation, but also because the way that we've got it, Sophie's from 3 days in the future.
Mm-hmm.
She's come back to now, and
Yep.
then she's going to be making another hop.
Yep. There's
You-
2 of her right now, I think.
Okay. Well, that's exactly my point.
Yep.
So right now there's present day 2035 Sophie, and then future 3 days from now, 2035 Sophie.
Yep.
So
no reason for them not to
is-
all go back, right?
well, now that's the question: is would both of them go, or only one of them?
Hey, two of us could play two aspects of the same character.
I wouldn't worry too much about character monogamy here. But Sophie, what do you think? Do you think you both Sophies would Sophie plus 3 and Sophie plus 0 would go back?
I think they would both want to go back, but there would be this uncertainty, like, should I kill my other self? Like the 3D one, the 3D in the future one, killing herself in the back, that's dangerous. You know, you could cease to exist.
Well,
we don't have.
She would Sophie plus 3 would not cease to exist if Sophie plus 0 dies because of
Right.
But she doesn't necessarily know that.
That's true.
That's
right. She
We
doesn't
have
know a
set
thing.
that up as a meta concept, but
Yes.
Yes. Also, Sophie plus 3 is hella more corrupted than Sophie plus 0. She's
Right.
not only faced the end of the world,
and when she
but time traveled an extra time. So,
Mm-hmm.
so she is definitely in worse. She's definitely in. Actually, how is Sophie plus 3 physically, mentally, or emotionally just fucked up even more so than Sophie plus 0?
Oh, let me go look at the list of ideas we had. Let's see. Where's the corruption? Come on. Oh, okay. I lost the page numbers. All right. Time travel. Is it before or after? There it is. Corruption.
16.
Well,
Are we all looking
yeah.
at the 52216 Fate of Cthulhu playtest doc, or is there another?
Yeah, I downloaded it locally.
Okay, yeah, that's probably the one we should go off of, because I know that I've got the one that Josh edited, and then PK made his corrections, and now it's my turn. But the things that were changed, it was really more a matter of order rather than any particular ideas being changed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One thing I noticed in this doc is that there's still several references to 2055. That's really minor, and I didn't want to be like, oh, I didn't want to make a big deal about it. But when I was rereading it, I was like, oh yeah, there's a couple. We need a little cleanup, but that's minor.
Yeah,
stuff.
if you do, Sophie, if you do a search for example corruption stunts, that might give you an idea, because there are 2 or 3 that we've got there.
I'm looking at them. Yeah, the modern Cassandra, the Beast Within, the superhuman, the superhuman hybrid, Hound of $10.
I keep saying that. I have no idea that's available. It's just that is one of the few Cthulhu monsters I know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we can get away with that one.
Okay.
I believe it is in public domain, but we will have a complete check, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a
we'll run it
complicated
through
question to answer.
Yes.
It's complicated enough that there was a woman who works for Chaosium that when I said, hey, could we pay you to help us answer this question? She said, actually, no, I don't want to talk to you guys anymore. Thanks, have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Wow.
Woo!
And that's when we were saying we would like to give you money to advise us on the ways in which we could not infringe upon your copyright.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is so much of it is technically in the public domain, but realistically may not be. But then there's the matter of who's going to sue you, and can they really get away with it when so many of these things have become pervasive in the culture.
Right.
You know, so we can actually get away with a lot from there was an email. I guess the Evil Hat's lawyer came back and suggested, you know, that look for things that everybody's using. And honestly, everything in the Cthulhu mythos that Chaosium didn't come up with pretty much everybody's using. So yeah, I think we're good on Hound of Tindalos, even though that actually isn't a Lovecraft creation. So
Cabin Secret,
yeah, it's fuzzy.
right?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's
Yeah,
Oh, it's
okay. I'm glad
cool.
I'm not a lawyer.
on my Cthulhu
Yeah, I've
Indian
been digging
ignorance.
into this a little more than I think I ever wanted to.
Okay, so the question was how am I corrupted? Well, I think that the Sophie plus zero or character plus zero would have things like spotted skin, kind of like the spots on an octopus, or and they show up more when using the powers and things like that. Maybe some translucent membranes between fingers, and character plus 3 would also have some bones that don't look quite humans, elongated limbs and joints that have a range that seems unusual, and gill slits and things like that.
Awesome. I love it. So I would like to also presume that we have lots of imperfect knowledge at this point, that Sophie plus 3 has sort of shared what she's seen. I'm calling her Sophie plus 3 and PK and Steven right now because, again, we're not sure if these are
Ease
actually
of
going to be
reference. Yeah.
well, exactly, and I'm not sure if these are actually going to be our characters. I'm just trying to frame our starting situation. But I think that it's fair to say that Sophie plus 3 has conveyed as well as she could, but may not have the technical knowledge to actually articulate everything perfectly clearly, and that PK, given time, could probably figure it out, but clearly time is not something you have. So I think there's a lot of imperfect knowledge right now. So what's it look like when you push the button? Like, what happens when you got? I guess it's a portal that's always open, right? So do you have to dial it to the right time? Do you have to set? I mean, obviously, because you could go back to any different time.
Chevron 6 engaged.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so the time machine was created after everything went to hell, but
Yes.
the nuclear pile has been around for 20 some odd years.
Right. So I love the idea that the time machine is kind of it's like there happened to be a nuclear reactor here,
and they needed power,
and we needed power, so this is a great place to do it. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, so we're going to build a new Mayan pyramid, and just hook up to this nuclear reactor because it's handy.
And the pyramid actually funnels the temporal energy, allowing the time travel, and is also helping screw up the radiation that's coming through with the whole temporal radiation. So the fact that it works is also screwing us.
Right. So it won't work if you fix it, or at least it won't work as it does. Like, you'll not only have to stop it, but you'll have to figure out an alternate power source or something else.
Right.
But that's a problem for future past you to figure out. So.
And if we go into the past though and fix the safety problems, then technically it should be okay.
Right. Well, I think that's a problem for current future that's a conundrum for future current you to deal with.
So it will have been okay.
Right. Tense is really important in this game, so I think it's a thing that we should.
I made a comment about that when I had the laws of time travel written up, but I think we may need to actually, and a little tongue in cheek too, but put some examples of verb tenses.
Yep. Well, I think it's going to be at sometimes a hilarious source of humor when people are like, who, wait, what? Which one of you now? But also it should be a real serious, like right now we have Sophie plus 0 and Sophie plus 3, and what do we call that? Future Sophie what happens when they both go into the past? Future Sophie and future Sophie, right? Awesome. So when you step in, is it like a vortex? Is it like your atoms ripping apart? Is it freezing cold? What's the experience of going through this portal as like Steven and PK and Sophie and two other poor saps are all going back to try
Your
and...
sister! Did you go back and get your sister?
Well, no, I got kicked out of the tribe or out of the village.
Yeah, but when you hear that this may be our only chance in 3 days, they're all going to be dead. Are you going to go back to the village and try to bring her back?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, would you like to try and go back to a few days ago before you got ostracized to try and bring her back? Because right now they're like shoot you on sight because you've become so corrupted.
Exactly. And
how are you corrupted, Steven? How is future Steven or current Steven corrupted?
I think that it's mostly mental.
Okay.
But there are some outward signs, like his bones have a little too much flexibility to them.
Awesome.
But mentally and emotionally, he has poor impulse control.
Awesome. Well, here's a great opportunity. So we haven't introduced any stats. We've alluded to high aspects, but we haven't used them yet. So if you have a corruption trouble along the lines of poor impulse control, or the hounds, they speak to me, or something along those lines. In fact, just to be absolutely, because I like to get the particular wording of compels right, but my compel is because you are unstable in the mind, because of your mental instability, it's natural that were you to return now, it would be a gunfight rather than it would be a bloodbath. So if you want to save them, you'll have to do it in the past. That is my
that works.
That is my compel to you. So that is my fate point to you. That we'll keep track of in a second. Actually, keep track of them with your counters. So if everyone wants to turn on their counter, because they have that thing, I have all the fate points.
So we should have 3, except Steven, who should have 4, right?
Yes.
No,
exactly.
we start with 2 in this one. I forgot.
Oh, that's a good question. PK, how many fate points do we start with?
I believe you start with 2.
There we go. Yeah, because it's harsh. It's a harsh environment. You shouldn't be too...
No, actually, we said starting refresh 3 and starting stunts 2.
Okay, yep.
So, I mean, we can change that. But
you get one fewer free stunt. That's what it is.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Cool. So everyone has 3 except for Steven, who has 4. Excellent. So yes, you realize that going back now would be a futile effort.
And also, do we really need 3 Sophies?
Everybody does.
Well, we have the capacity to have like just a ridiculous number. See, so this is a really good point. So there's a possibility of making an army of yourself by just going back and back and back and back and back over and over again. But the thing is, in order to make that happen, you have to keep getting more and more corrupted.
More corrupted. So you've got a limit
5 times.
Yeah.
Right. You can do it 5 times. So if Sophie plus
that
3,
depends on which one goes. If you send the least corrupted every time, you can get a corruption plus 1.
Becomes the next level of corruption.
Right.
I would send Sophie plus 0, right?
Right, and when it got there, it would end up being Sophie with a level of corruption. Because when you go past, every time you go past, you're gonna run into that
Yeah,
problem.
but then you go to the past and you send that Sophie, which is now the new +0, right?
Right. So you send it into the past.
Because you're a
but-
gamer and a
except-
power
but the-
munchkin.
But the Sophie that went back to that point to create to meet that present day Sophie, you send that other present day Sophie down. When they get there, the one who came back from the future isn't in the past because that's not the one who went backward.
Yeah, there's definitely a Fiasco game that sounds like that. We should try
It's
it.
called Four Sophies, and we all play Sophie. The other thing is that
Infinite Sophies.
if you go far enough into the past, the technology for time travel doesn't exist. So
That's
you can
right.
go
Exactly,
back
point zero.
to like now. You can only go from the future, which you've just decided in 3 days ends, to the now, which you could do a bunch of times for sure. But you get this pile of a gazillion super corrupted Sophies. You wouldn't be able to say like, let's go back to a nicer
and then
time.
you rule the world with a Cthulian fist.
Yes. Thank you for.
and if you go back far enough, and you end up building up you end up with 4 or 5 clones of Sophie. The final one will be so corrupted that it will kill the others.
Yeah. I do want to see the band of 4 Sophies that have varied corruptions, and they might not even have the same corruptions because they might have spawned off of different chains, right? Like they're not necessarily a sequence of Sophie. It's like branching Sophies.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the AP in 4 years when people have been playing this for a little while, where everyone is playing a different version of the same character that's just been back in time at different points in time.
Nice.
So,
cool. Well, don't worry. I won't confound anyone with that that particular problem. So PK +0. What's the physical sensation? Or what's the PK +0. What's the physical apparatus that contains the field that you enter into?
the physical apparatus is at the top of the pyramid, right? It kind of has to be.
Yep, naturally. That's where everything's channeled.
And instead of a sacrificial altar, it's a platform that sort of it's kind of like it has a heat wave, just always. Like there's a heat wave coming up of it, except it's not hot. It's just everything shimmers and distorts.
I was going to say, but it still has the visual distortion of a heat wave, so everything looks wavering, yeah. All right.
Yeah. And anything that sort of breaks the event horizon of that platform disappears.
Awesome.
And is never seen again. But theoretically, we understand that it is going into the past. And we've done some limited tests.
I've proven it.
We're very
in 3 days we know it'll work.
In theory.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. We're very certain, in theory,
PK.
This is a time machine.
Let me put it to you this way. PK +3 figured it out.
Yeah.
But
or at least I'm told.
Yeah, at least you're told by Sophie +3, who maybe you can't trust. Excellent. So as you all charge into this with literally the hounds of Tyndalos at your feet, nipping at your feet, Stephen, what's the last thing you see before you enter into the field?
Huh.
That's a hard question. Tell me fuck off and go on.
I'm thinking this might be the time where the temporal distortions start getting so bad that the chain reaction that blows the whole thing to hell in 3 days starts. So,
nice.
Because there's so many of us going out at once.
So yeah, I end up seeing the flashes of what's going to happen without a real understanding of what it is. So seeing the pyramid in the room disintegrate and and flames everywhere, and then winking out, and then and lots of screams and dead bodies, and that's it.
Awesome. I love the idea that we continually describe yourself being the authors of your own doom. So it's the fact that you've put a time machine on top of a nuclear power reactor that's causing the temporal distortion, and it's the fact that all 6 of you are like straining its capacity to all go back. That is what sets off the chain reaction that makes everything blow in 3 days. That's great.
That we're running away from.
Yeah.
Right, that we were warned about in the future before it happened.
Yes, but no one in the future knew exactly why, because they didn't know that you did this, because you hadn't, because you weren't warned.
It was ground fucking zero, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not getting a great report out of that. Like,
Right.
And if Sophie hadn't come back from 3 days ago, none of this would have happened, because so far, and because if she hadn't come back, it won't happen.
Right.
So Sophie
But
Zero.
if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have had to come back. That's just silly.
Right.
I say.
It clearly happened.
Well, exactly.
I'm not a temporal physicist.
Awesome. So Sophie plus 3, Sophie, PK, Steven, and Sean all go like charging through the vortex. Sophie plus 0, who hasn't experienced this before. What is the sensation of traveling through when you enter in this heat wave and you all see the futures, the future radiation? As Stephen described it, what's the physical sensation that you experience as you go back to 2018?
It's like swimming through a warm, embracing, viscous fluid made of hot needles. And it hurts like fuck. Because there's nothing
Taking
nice
a bath
in
in
this world.
Bengay and Tiger Balm.
Yeah.
Nice. So who of you do you
It's
feel like?
paper.
So which of you do you think is the least qualified to like be prepared to set this all right in 2018? Of the 4 characters, Sophie, Steven, Sophie plus 0, Sophie plus 3, and PK
I think PK.
is the least
No, he's the
able.
most qualified. He's the most
Yeah,
qualified.
I don't want
yeah.
the most. Who's the least?
Oh, I'd say I'm the least.
I think you're right too. Okay, so in that, do you agree, PK and Sophie?
yeah, I think
Sure.
like having the gorilla death machine is like he doesn't exactly have a good understanding of what happened or the physics behind changing it.
Awesome.
Yeah, he spent his entire life on the run in the jungle.
Right. So when you come through out of this viscous needle of goop, you find yourself completely surrounded by, you complete yourself surrounded by goop, but you realize that the goop and the sun blazes down on you. It's hot like you've never experienced because the ozone layer has been a roiling thick cloud, so real sunlight hasn't been around in most of your lifetime. You feel like the blazing Mexico sun pouring down on you as you roll down this hill, and you're just rolling through this ectoplasm of viscera, and as you realize that it's the viscera
It's the
of
2 guys, isn't it?
it's the 5 guys. It's the Sophies and the Seans
Got
and
it.
the PK
Okay.
just splutter through that you survived. So Sophie and PK,
Bye bye.
yeah, that's what I said. Let's not make characters. It's
You're
20
a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Right, exactly. But we've established enough of what they said that, maybe Steven has a fighting chance. So,
And I can't wait for his character to tell the story.
so
It's not going well.
as I understand it, in 2018, the children of Yig are the children of Yig are maintaining their numbers of human sacrifices by infiltrating the drug cartels. So
Yeah.
let's figure out where your characters, who are modern day people, fit into the Sinaloa drug cartel, and then we can make characters. Assuming, and I've taken some horrible liberties here, but assuming we want the model of one person from the future, one person from the future, a bunch of people from the present, and go, or at least the ratio is primarily people from the present, which I think is our sort of our
Okay.
default play mode.
Mhm.
Unless you were horribly attached to PK.
No,
Viscera or Sophie
I
Viscera.
love that you've gone like full on classic traveler and killed me in character creation.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I killed Sophie twice
Memories.
in character creation.
You
That's
didn't even get
true.
through a whole show duty.
Right. Like I was gonna ask, like, oh, who can my +1 be? Because 6 of us are going through, and clearly Sophie is her own +1. Like, who do I grab to bring through
Yeah.
and try to
Yeah.
save?
No, tell me.
Um,
Tell me who you bring to save that you absolutely doom in the process.
I was gonna say like the super young lab assistant,
Nice.
right? Like the 18-year-old college freshman,
Whole life ahead of him.
whole
Yeah.
life ahead of him, doing a really great internship sort of kid.
Right. Yeah, at
Just got
18,
pulled through and turned into goo.
right. At 18, you realize that that person was born a year before you were going back, and they've spent most of their life in this pre and then post-apocalyptic waste. So yeah, they had this chance to like make something of themselves. That chance is now scattered all over Steven in various organs and.
And smeared along a hillside. Okay.
Yeah, and it's what lubricates you as you just roll down this bramble patch.
Sliding
You're sort
down.
of sliding down, and there's all these cactus and hard rocks. So at least they
Awesome.
kind of there's sort of a protective muscus that sort of protects you
Mucus.
from mucus. Thank you. That's what I was thinking of. Protective mucus that sort of like that sort of protects you as you roll down, and though you're horribly dehydrated, you have this sort of goop around you that is now drying and crusting on you. Which of you is the member of the cartel? Which of you is the Hakon, the gopher, the guy who has to drive out to the middle of the desert to like pick up drops? Or the person, sorry, I shouldn't have gendered it. The person who has to like drive out into the middle of nowhere in your really crappy Ford truck to pick up a drop for the cartel.
I think I'm a driver.
Awesome.
I'm a really good driver, at least for the, what we have available there, because it was better than all the other job options.
Awesome. Do you mean
Hey,
driving was
that's-
better than the drive options, or working for the cartel was better than the other drive options?
The driving was better than the other options. I didn't have a choice. The cartel it's a company town, right?
Yeah.
Everybody
yeah,
works for the
It's a
company.
company country, yeah.
It's a company country.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, right. No, right. So when you're owned by the cartel, when they have the lease on your apartment, when they tell you who your friends can be, when they give you a phone and tell you who you can call,
Mhm.
you're not afforded tons of freedom. So having at least being a driver that can drive out on your own or maybe not on your own. Maybe PK will tell me that you are accompanied with somebody, but at least you get a chance to get physically out from underneath people's wives.
Oh. Yeah, I think it just struck me that probably I saw this movie when I was younger. Like I'm 18. It's 2018. I'm I'm the age of the century, And
Sure.
like
Let's play
when
Spirit
I
of the
was in
Century
my
as well as Fate of Cthulhu. That's perfect.
yeah, exactly. And when I was in my mid-teen, I saw this movie Fury Road and decided that's a great idea. I'm gonna get real good at driving, and that's what I'm gonna do rather than all the other shit jobs I could get here.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. And PK, do you want to be introduced now as someone on this shit job, or
Well, I think it would be more interesting to have somebody who is not a part of the cartel.
I agree. I agree.
You could be a kidnap victim.
But
They picked
there's
you up in
that.
Temple
No,
Once.
I was going to say, if Sylvie hadn't taken the driver, I was going to pitch a different cartel job, that of the cooker, like the person who mixes and cooks up the drugs for the boss.
Yeah.
Who's
Well, we
always
can-
really jittery because he's got cocaine just constantly going through his system.
I mean,
Right? Yeah.
if you really don't want to play another member of the cartel, so there's more diversity, then I totally understand. But I think that's a great concept, and I think the driver taking the cook out to their lab, because the cook cannot go anywhere without an escort because they're not trusted to not like
Oh,
sell to
exactly.
someone else.
Or
Cookie
crash.
absolutely needs a guard at all times.
Right. So yes, I think as you're parked, and you're in the passenger seat, and Sophie minus 17.
Oh, is it the same character? Okay.
I mean, well, since we haven't given the character's name yet, it currently
Okay.
is. But yes,
Good.
that is something that's totally up to you. I kind of like the
Okay.
idea that you're still playing the same characters, but you know,
Yeah, that's kind of cool, actually. Sure, why not?
Sophie minus 17 and PK minus 17, using only 2035 as our reference point. And I realized I switched from the numbers being days to years, but I didn't want to figure out the number of days it was going to be.
Just call it 0.1 or 0.01.
Yeah. 17 times 3 is... Otherwise, it would be like Sophie minus 6,205, and that just gets a little crazy. And this is and the reason why I was driving so hard to make this happen, and why we're an hour into the game and I've already killed off 5 characters and put everything in, is because I want to know what the action of play is, and that's why I wanted to get to this point, because this is the beginning of the Terminator movie, right? This is the very beginning. Is like we have a little prelude of what's to come. Like we saw a little bit of the shit, right? And then they say in the future, Skynet has fucked the world, and then we see somebody come back, and then it's on, right? Like that's like when you roll credits and then the movie starts. So this is when the show starts, and we've got somebody from the future who is super ill-equipped to make this happen, but has lots of good reasons to want to make this happen. And people in the past that have just leading normal lives, or in this case, sort of shitty lives. And so my question is like, what do we want to be happening in game? Like what like dials do we want to be turning right now? And so I think it's the crazy person trying to tell you about the doomsday and somehow getting other people to buy into it thing. But it could also be like crazy person trying to tell you about something, and then even crazier thing appears out of nowhere to like validate it. Maybe that's based on each group. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's probably going to be. Oh, go ahead.
I think that second one is more in keeping with the time travel tropes, because
Right.
you're going to have the traveler who shows up and tries telling these people in the past, "I'm from the future," and it was like, yeah, whatever, jag off, and like ignores him and like throws him in the loony bin, and then horrible killing machine shows up and starts wiping people out, and they're like, "Oh my god, you are from the future." Like at least that seems to me like a pattern in
Yeah.
Well,
at least time travel horror.
Yeah, and I think it actually fits here because, if you've got characters who are corrupt, who are in this world, they go into the past. Uh, it's a pretty good bet that at some point one of these gods is going to figure out that that's what's being done, and they can all travel throughout time and space anyway, and twist around reality. So yeah, they're probably going to send something after you.
Right.
I was actually assuming that going through this would drag something with us.
Yeah. I
I
was
thought they would
also
stick
thinking
to
that.
us.
Yeah, I was also thinking that the way we left 2035 was kind of in a bad way, and
Whose fault is that?
so
Putting it mildly.
I think it's your fault. I don't know. No, so there might have been other people with there might be other people pursuing you that are not necessarily agents of older gods, but nevertheless are corrupted enough that that they're sort of a demonstration of the horrible, horrible future. Like, as kind of messed up as Stephen was and all corrupted, like there certainly could be something that is ostensibly human but far worse that comes through.
Well, one of the things that just popped into my head since Stephen did pop through into the past in this horrible mess of blood and viscera, what if the thing that pursued us came through with us and in the middle of the time stream basically ripped its way through 5 people
Oh yeah, there we go.
before Stephen's character in this mighty struggle kicked it and they got ejected from the time stream at different points.
Yeah.
So
They
at
were
some
separated.
point, maybe in the next few days, maybe in the next few years, this horrible evil
It'll
thing
show up,
yeah,
Awesome.
or it's already here.
right, or it's already
was
here,
the-
which could be way fucking worse.
But I think we all
Yeah.
agree that something from the future that's really terrible needs to come back, and maybe multiple things. I mean, maybe that's kind of the perpetual antagonism is that
Mm-hmm.
not only are you trying to fix a problem that no one else acknowledges as a problem, and you have to work against the world's sort of inflexibility, but also like they can just keep sending more and more stuff back. I mean, that's kind of the Terminator movies, right? Is every time it's like another thing comes back to fuck something up, or to try and fix something. So, cool. Let's roll with that. Let's say that right now it's Steven plus 0 rolling down the hill.
Covered
And
in cactus and plants and
Yeah.
blood and guts.
but otherwise naked. 'Cause all
I'm
the-
sure that's a beautiful sight for anybody.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about dancing naked for us, Steven.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Let's see it.
How close do we come to running him over?
I think so. What I
Or running away screaming in terror.
so tell me if you like it. But my thought is, as PK the cook, you're sitting in the cab, jittering and waiting as the Hakon is out there like pulling a drop. Like dusting, like sweeping away this thin layer of dirt and pulling off a tarp and like pulling out a big old bag and then covering it back up again. That's when you feel the thump against the side of the truck. It's like something is rolled down the hill and smacked into the smacked into the side of the truck on your side. Like you and it's hard enough that you feel like the truck lurch from this impact. It hurts, Steven. It hurts
Yeah,
a lot.
am I conscious now, or
Sure. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I
Yeah, you
definitely
can be
mutter.
conscious through your pain.
Yeah.
I imagine I'm doing a lot of screaming.
Yeah, right. And yeah, you hear this muffled scream. It sounds actually not that completely uncommon because you've certainly heard it with people. You've heard people with bags over their heads begging for their life before they're shot, and so there's kind of that same kind of like
Like
gargle
what?
scream, right?
Yeah, like,
But you could see the Hakon, and she's like out there, so you don't know. Like it doesn't. Like she's not
What
clearly.
jackass got loose? Like, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Like clearly someone got on the wrong side of El Jefe and is like running around with a bag over their head and hands duct taped behind their
Yes, that is
back.
exactly
That's
that is
exactly what I'm imagining.
yeah. So let's
So I'm gonna reach into the glove compartment and pull out the pistol that's there because why would a
There's
cartel
always a
truck
pistol
not have a
there.
pistol?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's like
And
a 38.
open up.
Serial numbers are filed off.
Oh
It's
yeah,
reliable and nobody
it
knows
totally
anything.
used to be an LA cops service pistol, right?
Of course it was.
And like pop open the because I'm in the passenger seat, so
Yes.
I've got the pistol, and I'm right-handed, so I've got the pistol in like the wrong hand to like really poke it out, but like open up the door and look around and like try to see what's going on,
Awesome.
looking for some poor unfortunate soul with a burlap sack on his head.
Right, and I think let's put a couple aspects on the scene that as we open it. One scene aspect is we're already late.
Mhm.
Already late, and the other one is blazing hot day. Cool. So factoring those in, why Sophie is running so fast. So yeah, you bust open and you see this like mess. I mean, it looks like someone was just given birth, except for they're like it like have you been to like births?
Oh
Maybe
no,
not. That's not a
Yeah,
thing.
yes,
It
they're
looks
messy.
like what you imagine somebody being born
Oh.
looks like. Only they're fully
well,
grown.
I was just gonna. I was gonna say like I was speaking like in character like no
Yeah.
the cook is definitely single like has never settled down.
Totally agreed. So yeah, if a full grown man was just born, that's the
Disgusting.
that's what
This
you
is
It's
what
what
it
sort
it
of
is.
the orcs in Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, right. But like less black and more semi-transparent with blood tendrils kind of going through it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like parts that look like organs but are clearly not part of it.
Right. He's just got chunks of meat.
Yeah, right. Slimy bits. What do you do? Actually, let's turn to the Hakon. You've heard this muffled thump and this scream, and you see the cook getting out of the car, and you can just sort of see the cook pull out a gun out of the glove compartment box as he opens his door.
Which is mine?
Which is your? Oh, it's totally your gun. Yeah. Also, he's not supposed
Hey,
to be
it's
let out
there
of the
for
car.
whoever to use it. Just
No,
saying.
it's not.
Let's say you're like 20 feet away or so, pulling, grabbing the take. Are you shouting this conversation over because the door is open, so clearly he can easily hear you now.
So actually, no, I can't see him, or at least I can't see the gun because it was coming from upslope, and so I would have parked so I was downslope to get
Yeah.
out. So I see him, and I may realize it after a moment, but that's not. I heard the thunk and the thud and the screaming or the whining, and I see him. Yeah, I see the door open, but
Yeah, I don't speak Spanish,
my first thought.
but you
Oh.
hear what you hear Spanish for what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Okay,
As
you
I
PK don't
pointedly
speak. Yes.
right me PK.
Yes.
As
Not
as
PK
pointedly-
minus 17.
Yeah.
I mean, PK minus 17 might be like a grad student, yeah, like a chemical engineering grad student whose life fell apart and has now somehow found themselves in Guadalajara, right? Like you don't necessarily have to be. I mean, anything you want, but well, actually, I think we'll do full-blown character creation.
I will
second.
totally play Sam Jackson from the 51st State
Nice.
or Formula 51. I forget which it went to theaters in, but yeah.
Right. Yes. Cool. And yeah. So I'm sorry. So you hear the shouts and the confusion. You're in the process of pulling the take out of the little hidden hole in the ground. What do you do, Sophie? Minus 17.
Well, I shift the take to my offhand, which is my right hand because I'm left-handed,
Okay.
and I draw pull out the little holdout pistol I always have on me,
Oh, smart. You
and
have two guns in the
I
car.
crouch down because my first thought is protect the take because if I don't, I'd come back with it. It's my life.
Yes.
So
And you are absolutely, completely exposed. I mean, there's like three brambles rolling along, and there's the hill that the truck is on, and there's the blazing hot sun just beating down on you. Uh, but you have your holdout. It's got some bullets in it, and Steven plus zero, your world has been turned upside down and distorted, and
and
you
inside out.
And
inside
inside
out,
out,
and then
yes.
back
And covered
again.
all over me.
Um,
Uh,
and
well,
there's a man with a gun. I mean, do you know what a gun looks like? You're not that
oh
far in the
yeah,
future. Yeah,
yeah.
right,
There are still guns.
right.
Yeah. Well, at this point, the last thing I remember is this monstrosity coming through with us
Right.
and chewing through everybody, and me somehow managing to get away, and then landing on this hill and rolling down. So I don't really have a good sense of bearings.
No, I don't
So,
think you do. I think that's fair to
so
say.
I, if I see somebody step out of the car, step out of a car with a gun,
Right.
and I can't see very well because my face is covered in blood and guts,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
I'm probably not going to think, oh, it's a man coming out of a car with a gun, and rather think it's this, Lovecraftian monster from the future who was trying to eat me. So I think I'm probably going to try to do something to hurt it really badly.
That sounds like a really smart idea. That sounds really good. Uh, Things that are present are the car door that it just stepped through that could be slammed on a hand, maybe, or maybe
Now
your
here's a
own
question. So,
adaptations.
well, I was already corrupt
Yes.
before,
Right.
with the somewhat flexible bones and the very poor impulse control.
Yep.
Now that I've come through, I should be even more corrupt.
Yes, I think as well.
So,
So I think you should have a trouble aspect that is as we're slowly getting to character creation. I think you should have a trouble aspect that is related to your initial corruption, and then now take a new aspect
right.
reflecting what just happened.
Yeah,
Okay,
so maybe not necessarily poor impulse control, but
Yeah, that was
driven-
Unstable.
driven to action or something. Because it's
Yeah.
part of that poor impulse control is you've got a passenger up there, right? Like that's or am I off base on that idea?
Oh, in terms of the corruption?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking it's more that he's becoming more out of sync with reality around him. So most of the time he's fine, but
Right.
then things start getting a little stressful, and he has like mini psychotic breaks.
Right. Because the particular reason for this corruption is the temporal radiation. So if he keeps seeing either alternate futures or alternate pasts or realities that don't exist, I think like psychotic breaks
Yeah.
seem pretty reasonable to me. It is worth noting that we might want to decide how, like the example trouble that we have is Whispers of the Dread Gods,
Mhm.
which is very clearly a corruption caused by something from the mythos. But if we had like a trouble like unstable or irrational or psychotic breaks, that's a thing that anybody could have, right? Like that isn't necessarily that there isn't a way that you could just read that and like look at a character sheet and go, oh, that's a corruption aspect. So maybe
Right.
we need to say, maybe we need to frame them in the forms like corrupted by, or like include the word corruption in the aspects somehow. I don't know, or
Mhm.
maybe we just designate them. Maybe we mark them on the character sheet like with a
Yeah,
star or something.
so I was gonna say, the psychotic breaks sounds more like a symptom of the corruption,
Yep.
Yes.
because
Yes.
at least when I was
Mm.
writing the stunts and sort of the example rules, I was operating off of the idea that corruption, the corruption aspect has more to do with the technology you've been involved with and assimilate and that sort of thing, because I'm trying to move away from the really icky insanity
Madness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No. Absolutely.
madness
Yeah.
sort of thing.
So let's roll it back a little bit and say what physiologically or mentally changed for Stephen
Well,
plus zero.
his body is changing to more of something else, whatever that happens to be, and that's going to include his brain.
Right.
If not, if his bones are starting to get weird, and so his brain's certainly going to be affected, possibly other things as well.
Yep. So, so there's a physical transformation. It is, yeah, and I like the idea that is encompassing of that transformation is encompassing of multiple effects. It affects him physically, but also is affecting him mentally. Well, let's leave it as a physical transformation for now, and we can kind of flesh it out as we go. We don't have to know all the
Okay.
details. We probably should eventually, but I think I'm okay with saying
So-
body transforming. Or
Yeah, and also corrupted stunts. How are we handling those?
Okay,
That's
so yeah, so corruption stunts. Each one has to be tied to an aspect, which we're already sort of dealing with, and then you get two abilities, an absolute ability and or a power ability. So absolute abilities are things that you just are. You are stronger than the average human, so when you go to wrestle them or lift things, you just win because you are superhuman. Whereas the power abilities give you a bonus, a numerical bonus to certain actions. And then there has to be some sort of cost involved. Because, hey, these things all come at a price. The major cost is anytime you use a power ability, something that gives you that numerical bonus, you suffer, that triggers a backlash roll. So whatever shifts you generate, you get hit with a mental attack of that same strength. So use that in moderation, otherwise you might be taking more corruption. And then other costs are more narratively appropriate. For example, the one that I set up that's basically a modern-day Cassandra, she gets false positives on her human lie detector ability. So she can always tell when someone is lying, but she can't always tell when someone is telling the truth, which could cause complications. It's effectively a very specific compel that doesn't give you a fate point.
right. The GM sort of has license to bring that in whenever it fits in the whenever it fits with the situation. So that's maybe a good place to start, actually, since we're not sure that the particular transformation that Steven plus 0 is, and feel free to pick a character name at any time.
Alfredo Garcia.
Alfredo Garcia, awesome. Alfredo. All right, so Alfredo Garcia. So Alfredo may, do you have a stunt in mind that you'd like? Because that may very well tie to like how we describe the corruption.
Yeah, the absolute ability I think would be inhumanly flexible.
Okay, awesome.
You know, if his limbs are starting to turn, a little more tentacular, they're they look weird in how he moves. Everything just flows a little wrong.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
So for an absolute ability, we should phrase that as can always escape restraints.
Okay.
Right? Like no matter how people try to tie you up, you just get out of it.
That's very, very useful when dealing with cartels.
Yeah. It's fairly appropriate to the setting we've established.
And then as a power thing, we could say you get. Is it always? I couldn't tell from the doc if it was always +4 or if the number changed, because I see some places where it's +3.
Change. I wanted to let that be a little flexible. It can be anywhere between +2 and +4.
Okay.
The danger there being anytime you use a +4 ability, that's a lot of backlash.
Right.
That you're potentially going to be taking.
But I would phrase the power ability as something effective. You gain +4 on overcome actions made to slip through, to get into places, or to squeeze through small spaces. So you can never be restrained.
Okay.
And in addition, when you want to be like, I get in there through the vent, and I'm like, the vent is 6 inches across. You're like, I do it anyway.
Like Dooms in X-Files.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And that way, you don't say you can always squeeze into any space, because there might be some spaces that are just too small. But it gives you a significant advantage when trying to do overcome actions along those lines.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think in terms of costs, we know the backlash when you use the ability. The cost of being super flexible it seems to me like you'd have a hard time holding a solid state. It might either be that you look deformed, or it might be that...
Well, I think he definitely, at this stage of his corruption, I think he looks fairly normal until you see him move.
And
Awesome.
you'll have two different corruption aspects now, right? The original one and the one you picked up by traveling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It broadens the mind and elongates the limbs.
Literally.
Okay, well, so how are we doing that with the corruption stunts? It's a matter of each level of each stage of corruption, you get one more, right?
I think it's tell me if it's wrong, but from past discussions, I thought it was that for each corruption you have, like when you get your first corruption, you get a corruption stunt, and then after that, every time you gain corruption, you become eligible for a corruption stunt, meaning you can, in your next milestone, when you get a stunt, you can choose to take a corruption stunt, or do you automatically get a new stunt for every corrupted aspect?
I was operating off of the second idea that once you corrupt an aspect, you gain a corruption stunt.
You tie a stunt to it. I like that because it's an automatic carrot for the player who's like, I don't want to mess with my character, and you're like, but you get this tasty stunt.
Right.
If you just inject this thing in your eyeball, you can see better.
It's also a little it's a little bit of a balm because anytime you corrupt an aspect, it's going to be harder for the character to use. Because yeah, you can use your trouble, you can invoke that, but at least in my experience, the trouble is always the least invoked aspect on a character sheet.
Sure.
And as you corrupt things, and actually this is something I should remember, as you corrupt aspects, they effectively all become troubles. They become more weighted to the GM compel than to your invokes.
I don't think I'd put that in the text as such. I think it's saying that they become more weighted to compels makes sense, or they're more challenging to invoke. But I wouldn't call them troubles because the trouble is often a defining characteristic of a person, and if you have too many, you're just like, I don't even know who my character is anymore, because they're too kind of all over the place.
Right. I wouldn't use that exact phrase, but just as a way to describe it, it's use the same language as when describing a trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. So, Stephen, do you want to pick your second corruption aspect now and a cool and stunt, or do you want to keep moving and we kind of figure it out?
Okay, so just because I'm still a little unclear on a couple things. So the original corruption gives me well, first of all, the trouble is there's a corrupted trouble.
Right.
And in my case, it's the this inability to control
physical mutations.
Yeah, and that's where I'm running into. So there are three aspects: trouble and high concept. Right?
Yeah, there's a total of 5. Yeah. So you have high concept, which is what you're all about. Yeah. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So your high concept would probably be something along the lines of 2035 freedom fighter.
Right.
Right, and then your trouble might have been something like, I'm trying to save my sister from this horrible fate, but now it's uncontrollably mutating body, or however you want to phrase the corruption.
All right, and then for this other one, it would be it'd be another one of the aspects.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm going to step back here and talk about the trouble. If you make a character from the future, do you have to tie your trouble to your corruption?
Yeah.
Does that have to be what you are about?
Well,
a corrupted aspect, I see, but could you have a flaw that is not the corruption aspect?
I think as our current plan is that you start with your trouble. So the first thing that happens is that your corruption takes over your trouble, and then the next 3 times you get corrupted, you use your other 3 aspects, and then the 5th time you get corrupted, it replaces your high concept, and that's effectively you're no longer a PC. But I see what you're saying. Could you change it and have your trouble stay the same if you really want to, like, my trouble be like, I'm worried about this or something else that's not.
Well, you gave an example. Say that Steven plus 35 or Steven 0. That character, say, was made with the idea that he's going back. Not just to save himself, but now he's seen what happens to his sister, and he's all about saving his sister.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And that's what the way the player wants to earn fate points. That's what for him would be interesting to compel, is to get into trouble by trying to save his sister. would it be okay to say no? I'm taking the corruption aspect. That's fine, but I don't want my flaw, which is about my personality, to be that corruption.
Well, my thinking on this was that once you start becoming corrupted, that becomes the major antagonistic issue in your life. That's the sort of thing that is going to drive the conflict and your potential damnation.
Right.
I disagree.
Because here's something I'm thinking then. Anybody who comes from the future really doesn't have any control over their trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because, you make your character and he's somebody from the future, automatically your trouble is corrupted.
Right, but that player is still writing their corruption. You can still write it in a way that's...
Yeah, but if you wanted your trouble to be something that drives or something more personal that drives your character or affects your character, that's effectively gone.
Yeah.
Plus, if you make automatically the corruption the thing that this character has to fight against, you're removing temptation. Whereas if your trouble is saving little sister, you might be tempted to accept more corruption and horrible things that could happen to you and accept bad bargains. You might have to betray your friends because you want to save little sister.
Yeah. Well, consider this. What if it was sort of a split between the two? PK, you were talking about phrasing all corruption stunts as being more like troubles. So what if you replace a stunt, or not stunts, or you replace an aspect? It can be any aspect you want besides high concept, but the kind of cost of that is that you're inherently saying, when I use this, this aspect is more likely to be used against me than for me. So the kind of the gamey player who wants their character to all be about I'm the super corrupted person, they could definitely replace their trouble because troubles are already working against me. But the player who's no, I'm all about saving my sister, could choose not to do that, but now they have one more sort of generally negative aspect than the person who just replaced their trouble with something. So it's kind of there's a certain incentive to do it, but it wouldn't be a requirement. Because I agree. I mean, characters are most interesting by what their foils, and if all of their foils are alien thing is making me go crazy, that might remove some possible, exciting elements of the character.
Okay. Yeah, I am totally open to that feedback.
The other thing I thought about is, what if you say every time you invoke a corrupted aspect, it has a mechanical effect, like you take a corruption stress, or something else, where you can basically make it so that invoking your corrupted aspects is actually more difficult rather than just narratively more difficult. I don't know if that's something we'd want to play with.
Well, we could. The mechanic we've got and system we have set up for that is the backlash.
Right. That's true.
Yeah, and doing something that puts stress on the character. If it's like a last ditch effort, because you're about to lose, so what the hell, and you use your power and risk more corruption. If you take a stress hit, then what was the point?
Right.
Cool. Yeah. No, let's leave it. Let's not tinker too much. It's a dangerous road to go down. And be like, well, we could change it like this and like that and the other. And you're like, holy crap, what game are we playing? What's happening? So, cool. So we know that Steven Plus Zero has two corrupted aspects, and maybe one of those is his trouble. But since we know. Garcia Jr., Garcia the Younger, has been left behind.
Yeah, I'm thinking that he's probably not. He's probably still driven to save his sister because everything
Awesome.
has happened really, really quickly. Um, so
And frankly, that's a lot easier for a GM to compel. Is like, well, you look over at that village, and you're like, that looks a lot like home. Uh, you know, like, or that looks sort of like what I remember home looking like. And it can offer opportunities that are less always engaging in the horror and more engaging in taking risks or character exploration and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that in selling the concept of the both the flaws and the corruption of aspects, especially the flaw, that it's remind players that it has to be something they will want to engage with. They will want to play with that flaw and have it to show up in the fiction so they can earn fate points. Otherwise, it's just saying you don't really have 5 aspects, you have 4.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, all aspects should ultimately be a way that players say, I want this to happen to me in game, this bad shit to happen to me in game. Like I read the description you had, Stephen, is I want people to call me to be startled and upset when they see me walk. Like I want that to affect the game, that it's not just like, yeah, I walk over there. It's like you walk over there and someone who doesn't know you is like, what's wrong with that person? And picks a fight with you or freaks out or
mhm.
is suspicious. And that's the way aspects sort of flag to the GM, like, here's the things I want to see in games. So yeah, I agree. We should definitely make sure that the corruption stays something where the player's like, yeah, I want this to constantly give me trouble. Or not constantly, but
Mhm.
significantly.
It's my kryptonite, and I wanted to show in in the story.
Right.
Okay, so that's the one aspect, and the second one, um, it strikes me that the levels of corruption should probably be something that makes sense in terms of progression. So it's not just a level 1 you can see in the dark, and level 2 all of a sudden you can breathe fire.
Right.
Um,
It might be, though, dependent on the source of it. Like, it might be that if you keep getting corrupted from the same rituals you're performing, that they would escalate. But if they're, one comes from this temporal radiation and one comes from time travel, I don't know. I could certainly, as a GM, if someone's like, well, I have two totally different corruption stunts because they came from two totally different things, I wouldn't say no, but I think in general, that's the right instinct, is to make the show
well,
a progression.
Because I
also,
imagine there's going to be people who, have various implants and things like that,
mhm.
because of
No,
the
no,
future
you're
that
right.
we've built. And then and so that could be probably their first one, but as they get exposed to more stuff, maybe they're just delving more into the psychological horror and less
Uh,
about the body horror of the implants are taking me over.
what kind of horror do you want to overwhelm your character? Your
Um,
choice. Anything you like.
It's choose your own horror. I like it.
Now, something that Sean, you were saying, caught my attention of, like the temporal radiation being the thing that corrupted him, versus something else, exposure to some of the creatures in 2035 and things like that. Now, I don't think we've got anything that says that corruption would be influenced by the source of the corruption.
Oh, I
Do
see what you're
we?
saying. Okay. I don't know. I think you're probably right. I don't think we do. I just sort of assumed it, but yeah, now that you mention it, like, um, let me look through the doc.
Because if you have, taking the example of you've got this, old one tech cyberware in your body, it makes sense that the corruption is going to be based around that.
Right. Because also the stunt has to be based on the corrupted aspect. So if you have like a corrupted aspect, let's say you have cyberware, and then you say, cool, in order to get that cyberware implanted, you need to corrupt an aspect. It causes corruption. It causes a level of corruption. So you take the aspect of, so you take like an aspect of like, I hear the old gods talking to me, right? Which is fine as a corrupted aspect goes. There's nothing wrong with that. But then when you say, what's your stunt? I have super reflexes. And you're like, well, wait, that doesn't.
Yeah.
Like the stunt doesn't tie to the. It ties to the fictional reason why you got the corruption, but it doesn't tie to the corrupted aspect that you took because of it. And I can kind of see justifying either one. Where you're like, well, yeah, I have this cyberware, which is just technology. It's not corruption, but because it's cyberware that happens to have, direct brain implants, that means that now Yogg-Sothoth can just speak right to my brain if he wants to. So.
Well, and here's the thing: the corruption is, as you have this cyberware, the corruption isn't necessarily having it. The corruption represents the cyberware taking over and gaining more and more control. So yeah, you could be a soldier from the future and have all these hyper reflex and strength enhancers and ocular implants, and they're serving you well until you get exposed to some crazy radiation, or you take a bad hit, or one of the gods points its finger at you, and now maybe some of those safety protocols that were in place are gone. And that's now asserting itself over you.
And that would fit with any other kind of corruption as well, because the main thrust of this, when we were originally talking about it, is they are becoming more like minions of the old ones.
Right.
You are physically and you are physically changing from human to something else. And whether that's coming out of these implants, out of exposure to some kind of radiation, some other kind of tech of the old ones, whatever, that's still the same thing of making you less human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think as long as we have a way that we can justify the way that they're tied together, whereby you say like, I have cyberware, so I have a corrupted aspect of like, brain overloaded by horrors or whatever that you want. That you're saying like the cyberware was working great, and then of course when I was exposed to this thing or when it became too pervasive or whatnot, now it has this deleterious effect. As long as you can sort of explain why those two are linked, then taking a stunt that's purely based on the cyberware in this case, or the magical ritual that you did, or whatever bargain that you made to get some power, is totally cool if that doesn't necessarily tie directly into the aspect, or it doesn't at the surface look like it ties into the aspect.
Right, which is why I would have been fine with Steven keeping sort of that poor impulse control with his cyberware, or with his weird tentacle arms, because it's a combination of mental and physical changes
Sure.
that are going on.
Right. Sophie, we've been talking a lot. Any thoughts?
That all sounds reasonable. There are virtues to the thematic link between the manifestations of the corruption and the stunt, but I agree that they're not necessary if you have some ways to link them other than the thematic not aspects in this case, but value. So maybe, for example, if you took an enhancement to your hearing, it would be thematically appropriate to also hear the old ones, but you can find other links like the brain implant, like the gene splicing and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, it's not the time for that, but when we review all this, I think we just have to keep in mind what the goals are in terms of we want to allow dramatic role play where people can push and pull and really create tension both internally and with other player characters safely without it becoming between the players. And at the same time, we don't want to encourage the kind of play that looks like, oh well, I'm just gonna make the killing machine, I don't care, because all the ripple effects and all the effects of the corruption are going, the brunt of them is going to be taken by other people around you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good topic, conversation that's worth having as its own thing, is how do you make a game that is a high action game where violence as a solution is predicated, like we're looking at Terminator, right? And the solution to Terminator is to kill Skynet. But even then it never works, right? Like violence, like every story about violence also yields true that violence begets violence. Like, yeah, maybe the hero is the hero in the end, but like there's just a matter of time before the next person comes up to try and take that mantle, right? Like, I don't think even in the most glamorizing movies or most glamorizing fiction we ever see violence be a solution that leaves people completely unscathed. And I think in this case we definitely have the room for, that character's like, cool, I'm a cyborg psychopathic killer, like I'm RoboCop, bring it on, I don't care about anybody or anything. And I agree, that's a discussion worth having, of like, make interesting characters, make characters that care about things, because otherwise you bore everyone else at the table. Frankly, I mean, that's what it comes down to. I don't care about people killing things, I care about people not caring about things, because then I'm like, well, I got no hooks into you, you're boring, there's nothing interesting about you, your character, and I don't want to give them screen time because they don't contribute to the rest of the game. That's my feeling as a player and as a GM when I sit around those types of characters.
That's a really good way of putting that.
All right, so it's 8:30. Do we want to? I imagine PK minus 17's hand has just been mashed in the door, unless something else has happened. Do we want to? And like, you guys can tell me this is terrible, Sean. I hate this setup, but and make something else. But do we want to go into like full-blown character creation so that we can have another session with full-blown characters, or do we want to proceed with these kind of like, I've got an aspect in a stunt and I'll keep building as we go shells?
I'm fine with going how we've been, because I've been taking this as us figuring out which things work and which don't, in terms of like corruption and time travel and all those other things, which is exactly what we've gotten. So I'm not sure that character creation is necessarily going to tell us much new.
Yeah. I don't think that's why I wanted to skip it for the beginning, is as like making fake characters is not necessarily new at all, right? Yeah,
it's new tech except for the stunts, the corruption stunt.
Right. Cool. All right. Let's proceed for a little bit. I feel like I'm slowing down a little bit.
I'm definitely starting to flag.
Yeah, it's late at your end, huh?
Yeah,
Well, not mine.
no, I just saw a yawn from PK too. So, do we want to?
My apologies.
No, it's
No,
you
that's
don't need
fine.
to apologize.
I've been up since 5 a.m. So
Why don't we call it then? We've gotten a good 2 hours of tinkering and banging around on this on it. That's fine. We don't need to. There's no reason to drag this out. We definitely want to keep doing this more. So
Yeah, and there's a lot of things I need to go back and listen to and write down notes.
Right, and
Yeah.
2 hours of audio is a lot more palatable than 4. I can say from
Yeah.
personal
Yeah.
experience. So,
Yeah.
Cool.
I have a meeting. I was gonna say I have a meeting tomorrow morning with Twyla. We're gonna talk about tonight because I was just like, hey, it's great. I don't really know what we need feedback on because nobody's played this. She's just like, well, let's try to talk to you after you've played it. So
Yeah.
we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm gonna be talking to her Sunday night. And we went over a lot of stuff when we initially met. So, yeah, this has been really useful for me.
Cool. I think I say we keeping it really. I say as we continue doing it, we keep keeping it really flexible. Where we're not like committed to like this is the game and we have to do it right and we're playing, and just bounce back and forth between this actor and author role a lot because like it means our game is less immersive and less like we're like in the game, but it also allows us to make lots of spot changes and spot checks that you can't do if you're like committed to playing the whole time. So
Oh my God! You found my next blogging topic: the difference between playtesting and playing.
Sure.
Yeah, like I told Twilight, there's a lot of really new weird shit in Fate of Cthulhu that that Fate doesn't normally do. Let alone, well, I mean, I can't think of any other games that have this sort of timeline thing.
Yeah.
So let alone Fate, but like any game, like there's just not to pat myself on the back too much, but I came up with some pretty weird and original stuff.
Yeah,
So,
no, I was rereading it and I was pretty excited about it. So, all right, let's schedule our next playtest so that we're not leaving it hanging. Next week, the only day I have free is Wednesday. It's depressing.
So we're gonna have to play sometime after July 15th.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, vacation time, huh?
Yeah, I leave next Wednesday.
Okay.
And I won't be back until I don't get back from the UK until July 15th.
Well, you have a goddamn good time in the UK. All right, so then let's look at
how
the.
About, well, so we've got the 18th to the 17th to the 23rd is the following Sunday to Saturday.
Yeah.
I imagine, PK, you're going to be dealing with jet lag. Do we want to try that following Friday on the 22nd?
I could do that.
Kids. Yeah, I don't have anything going on the 22nd. I've got my kids here, but they like hearing weird cryptic stuff in the background. Awesome. Sophie, does the 22nd work for you?
Yeah, same time in the evening.
Yeah, it's just 6:30. I originally said 6 in the first email, and then I changed it to 6:30 because I was like, that's crazy talk. So, because by the time I get home, it's almost already 5:45, and I gotta eat and all that jazz. All right, I'm gonna make so July 22nd. Let me just make sure there's nothing going on there. Nope.
Yeah, my schedule is open.
Cool.
Yeah, enjoy the UK while it's still there.
Right?
Well, hey, think of it this way: your money's going to go a lot farther now.
Yeah. I looked at the exchange rates and I figured out we saved $175 on hotel between last night and this morning.
Wow.
Yeah,
Spoken like a true robber baron.
it was special. Like I was looking at it, and it was like, damn.
I know, right? It's just, yeah, it's crazy. I was talking to Richard Bellingham this morning, and he was just like losing his mind. He's lives in London, and he's just like, actually lives in the UK. I don't know exactly where, but yeah, he's like, my country is falling apart in front of me.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, when you've lived here for a long time, you're used to it, but for them, it's new. I'm so mean.
But accurate.
Right, later we said June 22nd.
July.
July 22nd. At 6:30 and go. All right. The computer does not handle Hangouts very well. It's like.
Oh, God, they
think
never
that's-
got Hangout to work well.
Yeah, that's more Hangouts than it is your computer.
Right.
I
Well,
got the first link from you, and clicking on it takes me to the old version of Hangouts where nothing happened. So then I got your second invite through the chat, which worked, but then it reset all my microphone settings, which I had taken care of beforehand, so I wouldn't have this problem.
sorry. Yeah.
Hangout,
Yeah.
Google.
Based on what we've said so far, and realizing this is still on broadcast right now. In fact, I'm going to stop broadcasting. Actually, bye all. If anyone ever sees this again.